I'd like to record a short video, maybe not so short. I'd just like to do a bit of a biography, and it's more about finding entrepreneurship than about me to some extent. Although the video is a lot to do with my work experience over the years. So for the first 18 years I worked in manufacturing. Started as an apprentice straight out of the army doing my national service. I wasn't yet 20 when I started work in industry, and I studied at night school and worked my way up from an apprentice to a foreman to an engineer to a manager and to a factory manager. And along the way, I obviously learnt a lot, met a lot of people, and gained a lot of experience in manufacturing. And a ex-colleague of mine, in fact, the guy that appointed me as an engineer, and he appointed me as an engineer because I was frustrated with uh, the state of the work environment and the amount of rubbish we were producing, scrap and reworks and things like that. And I was challenging a lot of the people who had the means to fix those things and were doing nothing about it really. And I suppose if you know me well, then that's pretty much who I am. So he invited me to be an engineer in his department. He was the manager there. And he educated me. The first day I worked there, I worked on a computer. And I worked on Lotus 123. That was my first computer experience in a work environment. And then years later, when I was the factory manager of a different plant, um, he approached me, and this was early 1998. So I'd already been in industry since 1980, so that's 18 years in manufacturing. And then he basically headhunted me to go and become a management system consultant. I'm not going to mention company names. I don't think it's necessary. But anyway, I worked there, and I worked at big companies. I worked at the oil refinery in Durban, Sapref. I worked at a fruit canning factory in Tulbagh and Makassar. I worked at Max Steel. I worked at Kutala Mine and a lot of other projects. The Debus Fleet Management that took over the Telkom vehicle fleet with a swap body concept. So I worked on a lot of big projects, consulting to a lot of big companies. Unfortunately, it required a lot of traveling. And even during the 9/11 fiasco, I was in Durban at the time, and the next day I flew to Cape Town, and at the end of the week I had to fly back to Joburg. So, so that was 2001. The end of 2001, beginning of 2002, I managed to secure a position to start the Manufacturing Advisory Center in Rustenburg. So I joined the MAC program, the Manufacturing Advisory Centers, which was run by NAMAC through the CSR at the time. And I arrived at the office after our induction period with a key and a CD disc with some documents on it. We had no furniture. We had my colleague Zula, who was working with me. We joined together. We'd never been in Rustenburg before. I think I drove through there one night on the way to Sun City in the early years, and that was as close as I'd come to Rustenburg. So we both had Rustenburg as a blank sheet of paper, and we started a manufacturing advisory center with a blank sheet of paper. And we built that up to a fully fledged office and with a good client base. I mean, we got in our cars. We had nothing to do because we had no furniture, we had no computers, we had nothing. So we knew what to do. We got in our car, we went and parked under a tree in the industrial area, and then walked from factory to factory, recruiting clients, so cold calling, and we made an impact. We secured a lot of business, and we met our targets and our KPIs for 4 years, essentially. So up to that time, I'd worked mainly with manufacturing companies, well, only with manufacturing companies, and only with existing businesses. So I knew nothing about startups. I knew nothing about entrepreneurship. I'd never experienced it. I never got involved in it. It wasn't even something that I thought about. It just never crossed my path. And it changed when our general manager at the time, Sibusiso Kunene, he negotiated a deal with the Umzobumvu Youth Fund, which was a precursor to the NYDA, and he got us to become an awarding agent for Umzobumvu Youth Fund to dish out vouchers to youth, primarily, well, all black youth, and 90% of them were sort of didn't have a business, wanted to start a business. So the vouchers were for things like business plans, company profiles, and maybe some other stuff. I can't remember exactly. But that was my first sort of foray into entrepreneurship startup world. So, and it was really frustrating because when it comes to manufacturing, I knew exactly what to do. I knew the standards, I knew the logic. I could add value to existing businesses. I could go into a manufacturing company and use theory of constraints, or I could assess them. I had been a registered management system auditor, um, a lead auditor. So I had been through, I could go into a factory and I was completely at home in any factory, having spent up to that time probably half my life in a factory. Then I got exposed to this completely alien part of business, which was a problem. It was a problem for me. It was frustrating because I didn't know anything about it. It was totally alien. It was put me out of my comfort zone, essentially. And I suppose those things happen, and it stayed with me. And probably a year or two later, we got merged with Ntsika, and Komodo Trust, and a couple of other organizations like a technology transfer fund and things like that to become CEDA in 2006. So I'd spent 8 years as a consultant in manufacturing, and now I was in CEDA. And um, now we were full blown looking at the whole spectrum of businesses. People come in there and say, I want to do this. Can you help me? I had no tools. I had no skills in that field. And for the next couple of years, I tried to do my best and tried to avoid startups as much as possible. And I got involved with a lot of good people um, who did business plans, who went the extra mile and did the market research and things like that. But it was more on a formal basis, more on a traditional basis. And I mean, the one business plan we developed for a place here on the Magaliesberg, we submitted it to the IDC, and it was done by a guy in Rustenburg. And it was a ream of paper. It was a 500-page document. It was a serious piece of work. And the guys at the IDC said, we've never seen a thing like this. This is a massive document, a comprehensive document. But unfortunately, we don't have an appetite for this business. So, we'll have to pass. So we got compliments, but we didn't get funding. And that was very frustrating because I did not know how to fix that. I did not know how to overcome this challenge of startups, and that persisted for a few years. And uh, somehow, somewhere along the line, you never know who's going to cross your path and why they cross your path. I got invited to be a mentor at the Global Clean Tech Innovation Program run by TIA. And apparently, other people at CEDA had been invited, but it turned it down and it sort of landed up on my table. And unknowingly, or not knowing anything about it and not knowing the impact it would make on my life, I accepted the challenge. And they had an induction program that was run by a guy by the name of Paul de Gives from Silicon Valley, educated in like formal business, and was an executive scout and a whole lot of things. And he was actually the guy that developed the curriculum. He was the curriculum chair for the Global Clean Tech Innovation Program, initiated by the United Nations Industrial Development Organization and the Global Entrepreneurship Fund, or GEF, and Clean Tech, which is a big organization in the States. And they'd put this plan together, and he was sort of like he was the guy that came up with the program. And I was fortunate that when he came to South Africa, he didn't expect anybody to know anything. So he looked at us as though we were blank sheets of paper. And he took us from a blank sheet of paper and he colored it in. And he gave me that first exposure and understanding of the entrepreneurial journey. And I'll always be grateful to him. Rest in peace, Paul. Um, he has since passed on, but he changed my life in a short space of time because he taught me a couple of things in a short period of time, like validation. Saying, I'm going to show you this whole process, but the main thing is validate, validate, validate. And if you don't know, go and find out, validate. And I mean, I was a mechanical engineer, you know, I work with facts. I'm not, a theorist. I'm a practical person. And he's telling me that the only way to do this is to be practical. And if you don't know, you got to find out. So it's a learning experience as an entrepreneur. But as a mentor and a coach and a consultant, you have to follow the same process and check me because I'm giving you the story and I got this story from all of these people and I've learned it by going through a process. So you got to go through that process. And he was throwing names out there of people who were experts in their field, like Jeffrey Moore, Crossing the Chasm, Steve Blank with Customer Discovery, and Eric Ries with the Lean Startup. And, you know, so I started there and I started to absorb what Paul was talking about. And one of the first things that they put on the table, he says, "What's the pain?" Pain? What the hell are you talking about? If I got a pain, I take a tablet, And he's saying, no. When it comes to uh, being an entrepreneur, you got to find the pain or the problem or the job that needs to be done by the people who you think are your customers. And that pain is the thing that's going to give you a business. So find the pain, the problem, and your job is to find a solution. And once you find the solution, you have a problem solution fit. And then you have to develop a product or a service that's going to deliver the pain reliever. And that was totally new concept to me. I mean, I understood. I mean, I was an auditor. I understood you find problems, you do the corrective action, but this was a different approach to the same concept, but from a business point of view rather than from a system point of view. I suppose it is a system point of view, but if the system is broken, you need to find a way to make money by filling the gap where it's broken. And that was his point of departure. And there's a lot of other things that come with it. So obviously now, I mean, it's like I got hit with a wet fish in the face because for 10, 15 years or whatever, 13 years or 12 years, I'd been grappling with this concept of how do you start a business? Where do you find customers? How do you write a business plan when you ain't got a clue about what's going on? And obviously, my eyes were open wide. I was like, I've got to, I've got to delve deep into this, and I started to read. because I was validating what Paul was saying. He was saying you have to do this and you have to do that, and this is how it looks and that's how it looks. And I just jumped straight in, and I searched for all those books. And the thing about reading and books is that people who write books are not in isolation. They they are talking about their experience with other people and other books that they've read, and then your book list gets longer and longer and longer, and people keep writing new books. The list just doesn't get shorter. So you keep reading and you keep researching, and along the way, I started to read reports as well. There's people's people are doing research rather than just writing books, and then I encountered people like the Kaufman Foundation, uh, Startup Genome, Startup Commons, Global Entrepreneurship Monitor, and started to get a more holistic picture of the whole entrepreneurial scene. And also my experience in the GCIP. Also, over the years, we did things like business clinics where we would have a conference room or a number of rooms where we'd have experts in various fields like a patent attorney and a lawyer and a marketing guy and a technical guy and myself and other generalists um, sitting at tables, and it's almost like speed dating where you have half an hour to talk to this consultant. And as an entrepreneur, now the cohort would work their way through this row of tables. So somebody would sit with me, and then we would discuss their business and what they were doing and how they were doing it, and then they would move on to the next table, and they would be discussing their business with that person, and I suppose that also uh, started to open my eyes to a community approach to entrepreneurship. So it's not a one man show as a consultant in entrepreneurship. There are lots of people with a lot of diverse experience and backgrounds and expertise that an entrepreneur needs to engage with to be able to find a market, uh, build a business. So um, I spent a lot of time with Paul and picked his brains as much as I could, and tried to um, learn as much from him and others. The GCIP was stacked with very clever people, experienced people, knowledgeable people, professional people. Gershwin McCure, Kevin Braithwaite, and I know I'm missing some names there. And we had webinars on a weekly basis, and you're talking about 2016, 2017, 2015, where before the pandemic, because the pandemic, you know remote became a big thing. But this is years before, 5 years before the pandemic. We had weekly webinars that were run out of globally. Kevin Braithwaite was in DC. I think he's still in DC, still running the GCIP, and he's got some new people that are working with him. And Paul could be anywhere in the world. Paul could be in Spain, he could be in Turkey, he could be in Israel, he could be, because the Global Clean Tech Innovation Program was run out of 14 different countries, and he traveled to all of those, sort of spreading the message. And so for 50 webinars at a time, we plowed through a lot of learning and listening and understanding and experiences. And obviously the thing is, we also worked with a lot of different businesses. We worked on guys that were making bricks out of paper, people that were doing solar, people that were doing electrical generation with pyrolysis, and people that were processing waste. Clean tech and green tech and technology is a very broad spectrum. So you get exposed to, uh, not that I had not been exposed, 20 years, 28 years in manufacturing, I learned a lot. But this was about entrepreneurship in these fields, how to find customers, how to solve problems, how to conceptualize a business and make it work. So it was a massive learning curve. So not only was I drawing on these people that had been in this industry for so long, because Silicon Valley, like, been going for 50 years or whatever. So there's a lot of experience there, and we were just getting the first taste. And then obviously with reading all the books and um, doing the research, the more I did that, the more I realized that there's an entrepreneurial journey. It's not a one size fits all, but there's a core that is essential. Then obviously there's anything goes. You can't predict what an entrepreneur's got to go through to make a business. But there are core elements that make an entrepreneur. And I think I learned that along the way. What is an entrepreneur? And how to make an entrepreneur? Because what I learned is that it's a process. Entrepreneurship is a process, and if it's a process, one can document it. If you can document it, you can share it. So, wow, now I could take the entrepreneurship and I could show other people this is how you do it. So that was a real aha moment for me. But I also realized that as a mentor in entrepreneurship, given that core, the core elements, there are 1,000 other people that need to be involved with that entrepreneur, or thousands of other people that need to be involved with that entrepreneur for him to succeed or her to succeed. Because, I always say the part that practitioners like myself get involved with entrepreneurs is but a smallest, minutest little part of their journey. The biggest part of their journey is going to be facing customers. I mean, their life will be spent dealing with customers. Dealing with me might be a year or two, maybe more. But they're going to spend their whole life dealing with customers. So the part that I play is going to be a minute little part, and the other thousands of people that are also practitioners like myself will also play a small part. So in the total, our effort is going to be a minute little part of that entrepreneur's life journey. And I suppose you can say like Paul de Givre, he had a massive influence on my life. But he was a small part. It was like 3 years or 4 years that I I worked with him and got to know him, and then he had a stroke and sort of disappeared off the scene. And later, when I went on to his, recently, a year ago, I suppose, I went on to his LinkedIn profile and I see that it's in memoriam. So he had passed away just after COVID. So, one has to understand that we have influence and we are a community that has to make that influence. But it's like growing a child, it takes a village to grow a child. Once that child is mature, they're gone and you might never see them again. And if you do see your children, well, you're blessed. Most of them fly. And your influence is there, but your contact, they're going to spend another 60, 70 years doing other things that might not involve you. And blessed if you are. Um, so community becomes another element. So having looked at that community approach, um, it started to become more prominent in my understanding that if we want to talk about entrepreneurship, it's not a one-man show. It's a team effort. And we need to find a way of building that team or creating that team, um, especially in our context here in South Africa, where we have a serious lack of entrepreneurship amongst the black population, which are the like 95% of the population. So we have a serious backlog, if you like. Entrepreneurship is not a common thing. Survivalists, yeah, there are a lot of them, but true entrepreneurship is scarce in general. So, what do we do? What do we? How do we try and build a pipeline so that we can? Well, I'll talk about inspiration and things like that later. But how do I? How do I convince people that we need to somehow create this community and understand what's going on in the community? So, not only do you need to have a community, but the community needs to know what to do. And if you're initiating a community and driving a community and facilitating a community, you need to have some feedback, some information. And, I sit with somebody as a consultant, and when they sit in front of me, all I get is what they're telling me. I have I have no additional information about them. I don't know where they come from or where they're going to or who they're going to see next or who they saw last. I know nothing about them. All I've got initially is what they tell me. The more time I spend with them, the more I can learn about them. Now, as a community, that's not such a good idea. So, there's two things that stood out for me in a community. Number one, we all need to understand the entrepreneurial journey. We all need to have that shared understanding of the journey that the entrepreneur is going on. So, we can't have a business if we all not focused on delivering to our customer what our product or our service is. You can't have a business where one guy's thinking product and another guy's thinking service, and we're supposed to be working together. So if we want to create a community, we have to have some basis for collaboration. We need to have some kind of foundation that we agree on, that we share and we appreciate. So that's the first thing I had to sort of come to terms with. The second thing is we need to have a shared knowledge of these clients. Because the thing that's key here is that nobody in this community owns that entrepreneur. That entrepreneur is shared by all of us. The entrepreneurial journey is a concept shared by all of us. And the information regarding our collective involvement with that client is a shared information, or should be shared information. So when that person sits in front of me and starts telling me their story, I want to be able to type their ID number into a computer, and it'll tell me where they've been, what they've been up to, what benefit they've received out of the process to date, where they are in the entrepreneurial journey. Then I can give them a lot better advice, and I don't depend on their information that they're sharing with me, which I'm not sure of their motives. Maybe they playing me up against somebody else, or I don't know. So uh, I need to be clear on who you are, what you are, and where you are in your journey. I need some transparency about you. And I call that a transparent transactional view. I need to see where you're coming from, and that will give me, together with your story, a better sense of where I can take you, where you should go next. Should it be me? I don't know. If I look at all the factors together, you shouldn't be talking to me, because that guy over there is the more appropriate person to be talking to. So these are the things that started to come out of this whole learning experience about entrepreneurship as a process and as a journey, and the community approach to entrepreneurship, and the sharing of information, and the transparency within a community. So I developed the startup ecosystem development model. So basically we're creating an ecosystem. And one of the key elements in the startup ecosystem development model is shared services. So if you want to collaborate with somebody, you need to have a value proposition. And a value proposition in this case, yeah, is an entrepreneurial journey. It's not something that you own. It's not something I'm dictating. It's not something alien to you. You might not be familiar with the detailed concepts like I'm explaining it, but we can unpack it for you and you will see what we're talking about, because it's a universal understanding and you probably understand it, but maybe not in so many words. So if you work in that kind of community, we can bring you up to speed with the entrepreneurial journey and its implications. We can't dictate to you how to run your service that you offer. We can't dictate to you how to uh, deliver your programs or how to capture information, because those are unique things to every organization. You know, as CEDA, we have our own client journey. In other words, how we process a client through our organization. When you come and knock on the front door, what is it that we're going to do with you, and how are we going to collect information from you along the way, and how are we going to store that, and how are we going to process it. So that experience that you have with us, nobody can dictate that to us, and we can't expect to dictate that to other organizations. So the only way that we can collaborate without being dictatorial is to say, there's the entrepreneurial journey, sort of a shared concept that is neither yours nor mine. And the person who's going through that journey is neither mine nor yours. We share that. And the information that I've got and the information that you've got is not about us. It's about this person. So let us share that information. So I came up with shared infrastructure as the second element. So we have the entrepreneurial journey as the model that we're going to base this thing on. And then we're going to have the shared infrastructure, which is obviously going to be the ability to pull information from all the partners and put it in a central place for everybody to have access to. And it doesn't need to be hyper sensitive information, but it can, how long does it take somebody to start a business and get to R1 million turnover? Does anybody know? Um, well, maybe that's something we'd like to find out. So now you start thinking about, you know, um, a higher level of entrepreneurship development. We're saying, okay, so we have the model, so we want to be able to train the person in the model so that they can build their business. But then we want to have a community that's going to fast track this guy. But then we want to collect information so that we understand the the functioning of the community and the success of the community in such a way that we can fill the gaps, fine tune some of the processes, or maybe recruit some new people because we've got a gap in the process. There's lots that we can do with the right kind of information. So obviously, once you have that core of a development model, you then need to think about how to implement that. How do we go about building an ecosystem? a startup ecosystem that's based on entrepreneurial pipeline. And then obviously you need to think about how you're going to facilitate, recruit these people, identify them. Who are the players in this space in your locality? Um, what do you say to them? How do you recruit them? Um, there's so much one. So there's a concept of mapping. Who are the people? What do they do? Uh, recruiting them, trying to find a way of uh, giving them a value proposition of what you're talking about so that they will be keen to partner with you. And then obviously we need to get down to the practical side of things. So we need to deliver on the ground. So we need to have entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs. We need to have practitioners that understand all of this stuff about the entrepreneurial journey. So it's fine as a facilitator talking to the consultants, but they have people working for them, and those people need to understand this as well. So you need to have that training. You need to share this knowledge along the entire community. So there needs to be a, a deep understanding throughout the community of what we're trying to do and what the processes are, irrespective of which organization you work in and what your internal processes are. So, so you see the layers there. So one has to have the strategy, and then you have to have the shared services as a sort of a foundational level. Then you need to have the ecosystem building uh, layer, and then you need to have the delivery layer. You know, you're going to deliver services um, to these entrepreneurs, and I started trying to sell this idea to Cedar in 2019 already, and some of the ideas sort of got through, but I see now the concept of an ecosystem is on a much broader basis. You know, they talk about an ecosystem of, and it's true, there are ecosystems all over the place. Uh, if you take the government, the presidency, and the ministers, they have an ecosystem, and that ecosystem is focused on running the country. And then in each business, you have an ecosystem with the CEO and the MD and his people and the ecosystem that they create. And maybe they're also in an ecosystem. Like if you're in the solar installation business, you you're in an ecosystem. You have suppliers, you have partners. There's lots of people that are with you in that industry. You're not alone. And they might be competing with you, but they might be complementing you as well. And then obviously at CEDA, at our national office, is a community and an ecosystem. They have to deal with the Department of Small Business Development. They have to deal with other corporate partners, and they have to deal with um, all manner of service providers and things like that. And their focus is managing an organization. So each ecosystem, man-made ecosystem, I'm not talking about a natural ecosystem, but a man-made ecosystem has a purpose and a mission, something that they have to deliver on. So, yeah, there are lots of ecosystems, there are lots of communities, but the community I'm talking about is about entrepreneurship development. And a lot of people still don't understand that. They think I'm talking about general stuff, but the purpose of a startup ecosystem is entrepreneurship development. It's a grassroots thing. So I had to look at a broader process as well and saying, where are these people coming from that we expect to get into this ecosystem? What's the feeder? Um, what drives them to us? So I started looking at, you know, uh, even taking a step backwards in the process. So we're not looking for entrepreneurs. We want to go and find them. So instead of just looking at the entrepreneurial journey from ideation, pain, problem, as Dave Wilson of the National Mentorship Movement coined a phrase from when we were talking. He says, "Mike, it sounds like you're talking about from the pain to the pitch," and that's what I've been talking about. But if you want to go to inspiration, motivation, uh, recruitment of people that are not thinking about entrepreneurship, and start there and say, you know, this is what's happening and this is what's possible and this is how we can help you, and we can start you with an idea hackathon. Well, we'll start you with the inspiration. We'll go to these events and we'll invite people, and motivate them to think about entrepreneurship, and then take them through a process of how do you develop ideas for a business, and give them tools like, you know uh, like the early stage tools to um, just get their juices flowing, not necessarily waiting for them to come to us with and say, look, I've got this business idea. We want to help them get the juices flowing, and once we have them, we can work them through the process, so that we're not just sitting idle waiting for people to pitch up. We want to go out there and we want to inspire people to get involved and make use of the community and participate in this community. Because, as I mentioned earlier, it takes a village to raise a child. It takes an ecosystem to build a business or to grow an entrepreneur. So I developed another tool as well, which I believe is going to help um, business advisors and practitioners to have a grassroots kind of look at people that come through the door, and to get a sense of where they are. Because there's a lot of misconception in South Africa about business. Now, I have a lot of people coming to visit me at my office, and not necessarily coming to want to see me, but I often talk to people. I have a lot of people that I talk to. And I say, oh, so what's your business? And They pull out a CIPC document and say, "This is my business." And I say, "Oh, what's that?" And he says, "No, it's Mpuki's trading, tendering, projects, catering, and agriculture." And I say, "Wow, it sounds like a wish list." And they're stunned. They don't understand what I'm talking about. And I say, "So, who's your customer?" Then they lost. They don't know what I'm talking about. So I developed a sort of a flow diagram which starts with, do you have a business? And yes, the next question is, do you have sales? And 90% of the time it's no. Okay, so you don't have a business. So I start people with a grassroots, first principles approach. A business is an organization with a paying customer. If you don't have that, you don't have a business. Okay, so the matrix is divided into two parts. If you've got sales, you have a business. We'll talk to you about business stuff, business management and things like that. Because if you have a business that's got a paying customer and you're trying to increase your sales or whatever the case might be, there's no guarantee we'll stick in the business section, but you've got traction. That's that's a big milestone. On the other side, I don't have customers, I don't have sales. Then we start with the entrepreneurial things. Uh, have you got an opportunity? Have you got a business idea? Do you know what the pain is that you're looking at? So then we take them down that rabbit hole I call entrepreneurial journey, because then we know where to start with you. And there's a study, and I'm not going to quote a lot of stuff. Um, there's a study that was done in the States regarding what they call Main Street businesses or mom and pop businesses, like, you know, uh, brick and mortar shops along the main street. And they did research regarding those people, and then they did research regarding people that start a business from scratch. Find a problem, find a solution, develop a product or a service, start delivering it. And they found that there are 6 key elements that you need to be a business owner on the main street. And there are 19 elements that you need to be a successful entrepreneur. And the two don't overlap. There's no commonality between the two. So if you've got a little shoe shop on a street corner and you're selling shoes, it's selling shoes. You've got a model, you've got a business model that you are executing. If you're an entrepreneur, your whole mission is searching for a business model. And that search for a business model has nothing to do with executing a business model. And I think that's the distinction between a startup and an existing business. So that's why that document starts with, do you have a business? Yes or no? And if you say no, do you have a business idea? If you say no, we say, okay, well, let's put you on the ideation kind of uh, treadmill and we'll work you there. But you're keen, you got an interest, so we're not going to throw you away. We'll put you where you deserve to be. If you uh, have an idea and you have an opportunity, and then we can work with you in a different space. And so we take you down the rabbit hole, if you like. And the main thing is, in both sides, is validation. So you could be having a business in decline. You might need to go back to ideation. Start afresh. Become an entrepreneur as a business owner that was selling, like film for cameras. And then the digital revolution overtook you. Now you got to rethink that business. So let's teach you how to be an entrepreneur so that you can rethink your business to, you know, carry on being in business and not be, become obsolete. So, so this is the journey that I've been on. This is my mission, if you like, and and then you start looking around and you say, but why is there so much unemployment? Half the population is unemployed. How can that be? What what is the root cause of that? And I know one can delve into that, and it's probably going to be another rabbit hole. But the way I see it is, we have sufficient businesses to absorb half the population. And from Muketsi and Mbeki's view of things, he says that majority of businesses in this country, majority of entrepreneurs in this country are either white or Indian. So I'm just quoting him. Very few good black entrepreneurs. So if 50% of the population is employed in white and Indian owned businesses and corporates, and we need the same again to employ the other half of the population. So we only got half of the businesses that are able to absorb the labor pool. So we need to double the number of businesses essentially to absorb the unemployed. So, and today the nature of work has changed. The nature of business has changed. 90% of businesses employ less than 20 people. So, you can start doing some number crunching and some theoretical statistics and say we need X amount of businesses. But my mission in this whole sort of makeup is, if we can create 1 million businesses, we will make a big dent in the unemployment pool. So what does that mean? You won't have so many people dependent on social grants. You won't have so many people that are toy-toying in the streets. You won't have so many people that the police are chasing after, because the idle mind is the devil's workshop. And if people are working, they don't have time for crap. And, all those other spin-offs. And then obviously the balance of payments, the fiscus, all those other things start to come alive. Because if you've got, the businesses are booming, then government's making money through taxes. The export balance of payments will be different. And if we got some really good entrepreneurs, somebody like Elon Musk, you need, say, 4 or 5 good ones like that, make a big impact, that start multiple companies that employ thousands of people. Um, but the challenge is that to find diamonds and gold and even silver, you got to sort through a lot of gravel. So we got a big job ahead of us. So to create 1 million new businesses, predominantly black entrepreneurs, we got to create. We got a lot of work to do. It's not impossible. Look what Elon Musk has done. Okay, I mean, I don't agree with his politics, but as a business person, as an entrepreneur, as a technologist, I mean, he employs thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people, you know, and made a big success of it. There are other South African entrepreneurs. I don't think they're in the same caliber, Yeah, um, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, they are self-made millionaires. They started small, and it's the same thing for us. We're going to do one brick at a time. You know that story about how to eat an elephant? You have to take, you can only take one bite at a time, but you can still eat the elephant. But you don't have to eat it alone. If you dish out knives and forks, other people can join in, and that's what we've got to do. So we have to we have to think about the community and how to build a community. We have to think about the entrepreneurial journey. We have to think about the information infrastructure, and some people have coined it DIMS, District Information Management System. Whether it's appropriate or not is another debate. We have to think about changing the way we do business. We are good at enterprise development, but we're not good at entrepreneurship development. We need to embrace the concepts that I've been talking about. We need to understand the entrepreneurial journey and what it is that we need to do to make it work. And it's a frustration for me because it was an aha moment for me, but for so many that I've spoken to, it's not really an aha moment. It's one of the problems that I see is that as practitioners, we have a better sense of what we need to do. But large organizations, the people that are running the organization often have no practical experience in the delivery side of the business. And they are calling the shots, and they are making decisions, and they're doing it from a theoretical point of view, and they've got no clue about practical day-to-day on-the-ground entrepreneurship and what it takes to be entrepreneurial development. And there's a big gap. There's I had a sign on my door that says the greatest barrier to discovery is the illusion of knowledge. So if you think you know everything about enterprise development, entrepreneurship development, I will challenge you. Because as a practitioner and as somebody who's spent, I don't know, maybe the last 10 years delving into this topic, and consuming all the reports and the information that's available. I've even made it available to other people, and nobody even took the effort to read it or read a book or read a report or don't even know what's in the reports. So we sit with the challenge. And I will not give up. There are people who are listening. I've been involved with the CSR and their entrepreneurial development program, and we're looking at returning. I've been involved in the Global Clean Tech Innovation Program for a good number of years, and I've progressed from being a mentor and a trainer to a judge. And I've been involved in the Ocean Hub Africa, um, the Climate Collective out of India. They approached me as well. And recently I was approached by Teka, and they're just starting out in Africa, but they've just opened another one in Mexico. So they're also an international entrepreneurship development program. So I think my track record in these programs is an indication that there are people who understand what I'm talking about. And you know, when you get a guy like Dave Wilson from the National Mentorship Movement who attended my program at the CSR, and he said, "Mike, I learned so much. I mean, he's my senior, and he has faith in me." And he said, "Mike, yeah, it was an eye opener, you know." So, and he runs the National Mentorship Movement. So, um, I don't want to blow my own trumpet, but I think I have a plan. And I don't see anybody else with a similar plan. And if there's no plan, it's a plan for disaster. And any plan is better than no plan. So even if my plan is not the best or can be improved, so be it. But I don't see any other plan. And I mean, people have knocked me and said, "Mike, you don't know what you're talking about. Every country in the world has got this." One guy said to me, he will know who it is. Every country has a startup ecosystem development model. I still haven't come across it. But we have one. We can do it. And there are people that recognize what I'm saying as being credible. Um, I was surprised the other day when somebody who I always thought was sort of trying to steal the thunder was giving me compliments. So um, I'm going to retire soon from CEDA, CEDFA as it is now. Now we merged with the bank for what that's worth. Because there's a big misconception that startups need funding. I never heard a worse idea in my life. The last thing a startup needs, or a person with an idea needs, is funding. The last thing. And I know that sounds curious, but there's a lot of things that have got to happen before you fund a business. There might be things that can be funded early stage, but We, as an organization or as a bank or as a funder, should not be the first investor in a business or in a business idea. That is the role of the entrepreneur. They need to make that investment. And that's the entrepreneurial journey. Nobody's going to give you an idea and help you make that idea or make that idea a business for you. That's your job. And once you've been through that process and you understand what you're doing, then one can think about adding to your investment that you've made in time and effort and research and validation. I don't want to go into free services because it's a sore topic for me. Handouts is just not a good thing. We need to see that you've invested time and effort in your business and that there's credibility in your idea and that you've done some work. I tell these people, it's your business, it's your job, it's your problem. You need to get it done. I'm an advisor. I will guide you. I will show you the pitfalls. I will show you the next steps. I will give you advice on each step. But I'm not going to do it. I'm not the entrepreneur. You're the entrepreneur. You're the one that has to figure it out. And you have to make it work. And at some point in time, when you come up with a funding strategy, you will find the right funder who's going to make your business get to the next level or fly or whatever it is that your funding strategy is about. But we should not, and don't expect us to be the first investors in your business when you have shown no credibility or no effort on your part. Cannot be. That's a handout. That's a failure waiting to happen. The other thing is when people come and they say, I've got this great idea. It's going to make millions of money, millions of dollars or millions of rands, a pot of gold. Nah, never heard of it, never seen it. You got to take it from the idea and you're going to take it all the way to that pot of gold. And the overnight success generally takes 10 years. So that 10-year journey, we'll walk with it, with you. And you'll get your funding along the way. But it's your job. So I don't want to go into a lecture about what it takes to be an entrepreneur, but that's how we should be seeing it. And that's how the community needs to operate. You're not ready for funding. You need to go back to this stage, yeah, and you need to do the work there. And this is the work you need to do there. And you go and speak to that guy because he's the guy that will help you with that work. So don't come talk to me about funding until you finish that and other steps, because there's 10 steps between where you are and funding. So go and do those 10 steps. Then you come and talk to me. And that's part of that transparent transactional view, so that we can put people in the right box so that they can do the job they need to do to build their business. So out of all of this, I've come to my mantra, if you like, which is the only way to do it is to find a way to create value for your customers. Because that's how you'll win customers. And that's how you'll build your business. So We have to teach people how to create value for their customers, which will give them the springboard to win customers and build their business. So going back to what I said earlier about what is a business, and I said it's an organization with a paying customer. And when we do that initial thing, do you have a business? And they say yes, and then they just pull out a piece of paper and say, I'm a businessman, but they've got no sales, then we know they don't have a business. So what's the role of the entrepreneur? The role of the entrepreneur is to find customers. Because if he goes through the process of finding the pain or the problem, and he finds a solution, and he finds a pain reliever, and he develops a product or service out of that, and he understands that process, and he starts getting traction in the market through a beachhead, then he has the ability to find customers. And obviously, as the rate of customers grows, it makes it difficult for him to be able to get to all of them. Then he starts employing a team, and he trains them on what he knows and how he's been able to find those customers. The sales process is used, the product is developed, the the volume of product that can be made, the volume of service delivery, and that's how he's going to expand that business, because he can't do it alone. He needs to have a team that's going to execute the the learning that he's done in that entrepreneurial journey, and that's a business. So that's the role of the entrepreneur, uh, and that's why there's a lot of things that have to fit together, you know, and so that's why my mantra is learn how to create value for your customers, because then you'll win customers. Because if you've got something that they say, wow, I want it, you're going to sell it to them, and they'll pay your price. And the more and more they do that, the bigger your business will grow. It's really simple. It's quite complicated, but that's my mantra. So as I as I get to a stage where I will not be working for SEDFA on a full-time basis, but I'll be more looking at um, being a motivator, facilitator, agitator, critic, uh, continuing to be a mentor and trainer and facilitator. I'm not going anywhere. I still want to be part of that first million businesses we can get going. I want to be in those ecosystems. I don't mind being in all of the ecosystems across the country. I've got one here that I'm working on, but um, I'm not going anywhere soon. And if you've got any questions, do you think I'm mad? Maybe I am. But maybe Einstein was mad. And he said if you keep doing the same things and you keep expecting a different result, that's the first sign of insanity. So keep doing the same things and I'll just keep laughing at you. But I know what you need to change and how you need to change it. And it's based on the community that I've been part of, that I've participated in, that I'm sharing this with you. Because this is not my own knowledge, it's knowledge from lots of different people all across the world. and I'm ready to share it with you, ready to um, work on the next step, make it happen. So let's get it done.